Hi everybody. This video is to walk you guys through your first essay assignment, which is over the short stories that we've read in this course. You guys have read different authors from different movements, eras, genres, talking about all kinds of different subject matter. So what you're going to do is, as a prompt, choose one of the stories that you read in this unit and develop a written literary analysis of that work. So you want to think in terms of the literary terminology that you heard in the lectures and how you can integrate that into the framework of your argument, essentially. So for example, you might think about characterization or setting or point of view, that kind of thing. You're going to create a thesis argument around one of those literary foci and include main ideas that are supported by evidence from the text. So you have stories here ranging from the story of an hour to the lottery to everyday use, A&P. And as you consider which one you want to write about, think about the literary element. What's the primary thing that you want to focus your argument on? Is it the setting? Is it the conflict? Is it the characterization? That doesn't mean that you can't bring in other literary elements. You absolutely should, because there's a lot to each of these stories. But you want to keep your argument kind of focused on one primary thing. So that way your argument is really narrow and tight and specific. Think also about the argument that you're making about that literary element. So what is the author's goal in using it? Nothing that an author does in a story or a narrative is by accident. So for example, if you're thinking about the lottery, the use of the black box is a very purposeful symbol. There's a reason that Shirley Jackson uses that. If you are thinking about the story of an hour, the dramatic irony at the end is very purposefully done. There's a reason that she does that, to get a message across to her audience about women and their role in society and marriage and patriarchy and so on and so forth. So think about what is the author trying to do with that literary element, with that characterization, that setting, that conflict, whatever it might be. And again, like I said, think about the other literary elements that are used as well. So you don't want to only talk about one thing. If I'm going to talk about, for example, the story of an hour, I would talk about the central theme. The central theme might be my focus. But within that, my main ideas, I might talk about the theme of, let's say, women's emancipation from an oppressive, institution of marriage. That might be the theme that I want to talk about. And then within my main ideas, I might bring out different literary elements. So I might talk about the symbolism of the open window. I might talk about this motif of freedom and how it recurs throughout the story. And then thirdly, I would talk about, say, the dramatic irony at the end. That would be my three main ideas, but all of these contribute to that main theme that I want to talk about. You can also think about how the author's own background or the historical situation influenced that work. So in a lot of these, you saw that what the author has lived through or experienced directly influences the work. So things like Hills Like White Elephants, you have Hemingway's history as an expat to kind of draw from in the story, and he writes from a place of truth and experience. In something like Everyday Use, you might want to think about Alice Walker's own biography and how this contributes to the work. All these different kinds of things you can kind of think about. Chopin, or Gilman, I should say, for the Yellow Wallpaper, her own experiences with the rest cure and postpartum depression. And then think about what kind of critique you could possibly make about the work in a scholarly manner. So think about, no work is infallible. There's always something to kind of think about or critique. Perhaps you found certain characters in A&P to be a little flat, or perhaps you felt Hemingway's, use of dialogue could have been a little more descriptive. Whatever you might think the critique might be. You do need to have one research source in your work. This has to be cited correctly in text and on a bibliography. This should be a credible source, so something that comes from, say, a .edu. It can absolutely be a scholarly article if you know how to find those through the database, but it does not have to be a scholarly article. It can be just a published source on the internet. Just make sure it's credible, not something like 123helpme.com or gradesaver.com, none of that. Look for sources that speak about the work and about the authorship. And make sure that it's really adding to your argument. So that's the purpose of a source, is to make sure that what you're saying is, the central theme of A and P. You have a published author or someone who's talking about that same thing, and you use that to prove your point, to prove your argument. So the way you do this is you bring in specific quotes from the research source as evidence to support your claims. So make sure that you're pulling in direct quotes. That's always much stronger forms of evidence than a paraphrase, and show how someone is, supporting your topic or understanding. So you should have a clear thesis, like I've said. You should have main ideas and the body paragraphs, and then expand on those with evidence from not only the outside source, but from the text as well. So just as you do with your outside source, you pull in direct quotes. You need to pull in direct quotes from the text, which show your audience something. So for example, back to, say, the story of an hour, if I'm saying that the symbolism of the open window is really important in representing Mrs. Mallard's desire for freedom, I need to pull in the quote from the text that talks about her looking out the open window and repeating the words free, free, or whatever it was exactly. If I'm looking at, say, Two Kinds, and I want to talk about how she bridges two parts of her identity, I might pull in the quote of the very end where she plays the piano piece, where it kind of brings in those two parts of herself to prove my point. So again, it would be direct quotes, that's really important, that help prove your ideas. So you want to use those words, phrases, or passages to support your claims, and then add on them with your own analysis. So don't just leave it as a quote. You want to expand on that in your own words to show your audience how that quote is proving your point. So the minimum page length, the pages, forgive me, the essay needs to be 3 to 4 pages in length and is due by Sunday, June 27th at 11:59 p.m. Your minimum page length has to be met, so that means to the bottom of the 3rd page. If you write less than that, that does mean you'll have points taken off. You need to have proper MLA, and everything will check for plagiarism, and a bibliography, of course, is required. That doesn't contribute to the page length. Now, for MLA, remember that is a header in the top left corner with your name, the instructor's name, the course and section number, and the date, a title, and page numbers in the top right, 1-inch margins all around, and 12-point double-spaced font, Times New Roman, Cambria, Arial, or Calibri. So the way that this essay grade is going to work on the rubric, you'll see 20% of it is going to come from a completed outline. So that's actually a separate assignment that you'll have done, and that will actually count for basically a free 20% of the essay grade. So the idea is to help boost a grade, just to give you some extra points. And the final draft itself will be worth 80%, so 80 points. And you're going to be looking at making sure you have good analysis of the work and its major concepts, good evidence from the primary and secondary source, the proper number of sources, which in this case is just one, proper page length, MLA, citations, and a fully developed structure. So make sure you have a good intro with a clear thesis, main ideas through the body paragraphs with evidence and analysis, and then a conclusion as well. And then careful, clear organization of all your ideas. So some things you can think about when you're writing this essay. There's so many things that you could choose to focus on in each of these stories. So I'm just giving you some ideas here. Please do not attempt to, cover the gamut of this, but you could think about characterization. So you could think about archetypes, protagonists, antagonists, development. Are they flat, round, dynamic, static? Think about literary devices like similes, personification, metaphors, irony, foreshadowing. Think also about things like structure. So the dramatic arc. Think about conflict, man versus nature. Think about POV. So is it first person? Is it third person omniscient? And then think about literary concepts like themes, motifs, symbols, so on and so forth. And then lastly, you can also, like I said, think a little bit about the author and the historical context, and think about how the social, ethical, or moral issues are portrayed through the text. So there is so much you could write about. That's why I want you guys to really focus on one major one major piece of literary terminology and analysis that can help kind of guide your argument. And then you can start bringing in other pieces of that as, other pieces of literary elements to help support and expand on that analysis as you like. And again, choose something that spoke to you. Choose a work that spoke to you, one that you really enjoyed reading, and that should help you pretty easily write those 3 pages. Let me know if you have any questions at all about this, but go ahead and move on.